Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all the way down to the little ass babies, welcome to the Uncovered podcast with Nick and Femi. I am your host, Femi, and I'm here with my how do I describe him?
You don't have to introduce me. It's all right. I'm here.
How do I
So I
describe
can.
my
No,
apprentice,
I'm here.
intern?
I'm here, so I can talk for myself. With Gucci
Who are
people,
you?
it's
Say
your
your
boy
name. Say your
Neezy.
name.
It's your boy Neezy, the one and only Neezy. 400. Psych. Nah, it's your boy Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on?
Bro, I'm blessed. I'm chilling, bro. Like, this episode is gonna be really, really jam-packed, really quick, really short. We're giving you all the short heat, especially while we're in COVID, trying to get through it, giving you some good stuff. But today's gonna be no different. Nice and succinct, I think is a good word to use it.
Yes, sir.
Concise
Yes,
is what
sir.
today's episode is gonna
Yes, sir.
be.
Yes,
So
sir.
it
Yes,
has
sir.
nothing to do with the fact that we've got to do something after this. Nah. We want
No,
this
it has
message to
nothing.
be
No, that's I got nothing to do right now. I just got
nothing.
nothing to do. Like my friends, like the hospital's not calling me, but it's all good. It's all good. I got time.
Crazy.
I got time.
So talk to
Nah.
me. What are we talking about today? What's it going to happen? What's the run sheet for today?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a really valuable one. What we're going to be talking about today is really how to kind of deal with negativity in your life. Because before we kind of get into that, the nitty gritties, I wanted to just pre-frame and put out there that in life, like it's so crazy that we're actually exposed to so much negativity in the world. Like we were speaking about it before, and we already in our previous episodes we were talking about how like 80% of like our thoughts and what we talk about is like it's all negative, and it just goes to show that the exposure of what's around us most of the time isn't really good stuff. Or maybe there is a lot of good stuff that's actually going on, but we don't actually take the opportunity to really just feel what's going on with all the positive news, and we just tend to just fixate ourselves on the negative. So what I really wanted to do this episode was kind of talk to you guys about what kind of steps and what kind of things can you do to actually deal with negativity in your life, because there's negative stuff on the TV, there's negative stuff that you hear from your friends, there's judgment, there's all these kind of things that we're exposed around. So it's like, okay, how do we actually deal with this? What do we got to do? And that was kind of really how I wanted to kick it off.
Yeah, and I think that we've spoken about this in many different variations in the past. But I think the big thing that came to my mind when you were telling me about this topic is that like perception is such a massive thing. Like perception is everything. The way that we perceive things, the way that we kind of like look at things is a massive factor.
Mm.
And if you can't have negative thoughts and negative kind of outlooks and have a positive life. It's not possible. Like the way that we kind of like sit in our own life and the way that we kind of approach our life and see our life is pretty much a direct correlation with the way that our life goes. So I think it's very, very interesting. It's a very, very good topic to have because there's so many things that are happening right now that are perceived as negative things. People are going out of work. That's some bad shit to happen, quote unquote. That's some negative stuff. The economy is going down. That's also pretty negative. Like you can't see loved ones as much. Pretty negative. So it's kind of like all the things that society tells us is negative. How do we approach that? How do we handle that? And how do we kind of like shift our perception and be able to kind of like move forward from this?
Exactly. Because last week we were talking about breaking the thought pattern of negativity, which was it's you might get confused and think like, oh, this is the same kind of shit, but it's actually really different, right? Because these things are patterns, but in life we're exposed to negativity all the time. Like that's an exposure. And what we're gonna do in this episode is that we're gonna uncover like when you get hit with those things that quote unquote are negative, because you will inevitably, it's like, what do you do? How do you actually overcome that? How do you deal with that? You know what I mean? And that's exactly what we're going to cover in this episode. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of having to deal with negativity is I think that a big thing that I found that was very, very interesting. And I was thinking about how, like, I know that when I reflect on my life and I talk about when I see like stuff on social media, because social media is just so prevalent in our age, I'm just always on it. Business runs on it. I'm just always seeing stuff. And one of the key things that I noticed is that as I'm scrolling through my newsfeed, like you see like articles, you see like this news report, and the headline is always some negative stuff. You're like, oh, okay, all right, let me suss it out, because I'm sold by the fact that you're like, oh, this is negative, and what the newspaper people say is that negative shit sells. Like that's just how it kind of goes. So naturally, we kind of gonna get drawn to actually seeing what that is. But in reality, when you actually take the moment to actually not just get too caught up on what the headline's saying, but you actually like open it, you read it, you do your kind of research and think about what's actually going on there, you realize that it's like, oh, you know, it's not even that bad. Or some things that they're saying is that they've kind of like twisted the whole kind of thing. And that's something that I kind of apply to my life, that when I read these kind of things, I'm like, okay, like before I kind of like be like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. Like I take a moment to do a little bit of research and be like, okay, cool. Like, is it really that bad? Is it really what they're saying? Am I going to just fall victim to like the first thing that I say? And I think for me, that's actually been really game changing, because it's like you hear all the time, people will say this, people will say that, people will say all these kind of things. But when you take the moment to do your own kind of, you know, research and your own kind of like reflection on what's kind of going on, then you realize that some things aren't just as bad as what you think it is. So that was the first point that I wanted to raise with that. Does that make sense? So do you get what I'm saying when I say that?
Yeah, I guess you're just talking about take inventory. Like it doesn't have to, not even just like with tangible shit, with also just like your life as well, and realize, is it as bad? Like, let's say, for example, if your girlfriend comes and says, whatever, whatever's happened, something's happened in her life, and like something you've got bad news. Doing your own personal emotional inventory to be able to reflect and say, is it as bad as my initial shock factor, which will allow you to be able to kind of like come up with your own conclusions from a grounded perspective. Because if we're actually grounded, if we're not living in our head, nothing is good nor bad. It just is what it is, right? And it's just like part of your process for life. So I think that if you're able to take your own inventory and reflect from a grounded kind of perspective, you'll realize that there is no good or bad. It's just whatever. And you can even do that with the news as well, and just like do your own research and be like, okay, this is the full story, this is the full perspective, and then I can make a grounded opinion based on that.
And even like what's going on with coronavirus, like, you know, when I was looking at the news, the first headline was like, Australia is the first country to hit 1% of cases in coronavirus. You're like, whoa, we must be doing so terrible. But then like you do a little bit of research, you're like, oh, well, our population is actually quite small. So that 1% number that they're highlighting is actually not that bad. And that's like kind of the, like you were saying with that inventory that you got to kind of do to be like, take things into perspective. And you're like, oh, you know what, it's not that bad. And I'm just jumping to conclusions straight away. So exactly right.
You can make anything sound bad. You can make anything sound good, really. Like anything. It's just the way that you frame it. And I think that I want today to be all about understanding the the power of perception and the power of being able to switch your perception and switch the way that you kind of like see things. I think is really, really important, because, and doing that research is really powerful, like you said, to being able to switch your perspective on things. Because the moment you do some research on some shit, you have knowledge, and knowledge is power, and then you're able to kind of like feel that, do more, be able to sit more in understanding and a grounded knowing than fear and regurgitated opinions.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And even just another thing that's like I just thought about as well was that, like, I think a really good thing when you're dealing with like negativity or dealing with things that that you've heard or you read about, is asking yourself some really important questions about, like, okay, now that I've read this, I got this information. Ask yourself, does this information that you've now kind of received, does it value or anything? Like, is this doing anything good for your life? Because a lot of the times we hear a lot of things, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, and we let the emotion kind of like sink in with us, and we start to really let it carry us for like a couple of days. But even sometimes when we ask these questions, like, well, like the information that I've now received, do I actually like, what is it actually doing for me? Do I need this information? Is it serving me? And if not, it actually allows you to make that quick decision to just get out of the way. Because as soon as something's not serving you and it serves no purpose in your brain or whatever it is that you're dealing with, and then it's just so easy to kind of like push it to the side and like get rid of it and stop thinking about it. Because a lot of times we just carry a lot of stuff in our head that is really not serving us any purpose and any good in our life. And I think that's a really important thing to kind of think about and reflect on, about what are some of the things that you're carrying on and some of the things that you just carry inside your head. Is like, is it really serving me? You know, I got my values. I know what's important to me, but I got all this kind of like negative stuff in my head. Is this really doing me a service? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it all comes down to what we've been talking about forever, is reflecting and taking inventory, like being able to look at yourself and be able to understand, um, kind of what's going on. Like, why am I holding this? Why am I keeping this forever? Like, why am I holding on to this emotion? And what's going on? Is it a trauma linked to it, or whatever? But no, I think that's a very, very powerful. Um, yeah, it's a very, very powerful point, Nicholas. Very, very powerful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What about you? What do you kind of think?
Yeah, I think that what I said earlier, I think is a big thing. I think that we can so easily become overwhelmed and enveloped by um, perceived negativity, because like everything sucks. Do you know what I mean? Like everything can suck. And I think that like it's so easy to be like far out, bro. Like it's really, really difficult to be able to see a way out. But I think it's about really just taking real honest time to be able to sit within yourself and sit within what's happening and come to grounded kind of perspectives. And I think that like I bang on about this a million times, and the reason why I bang on about it is because it's a game changer, and it's the truth. It's the reality. Is that if you're not able to take that time for reflection and gain that emotional intelligence, gain that kind of like understanding of self, it's very, 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 very difficult to to move on from negative shit, bro. And I think that like, you know, the saddest people are people that know themselves the least, and the people that are happiest are the people that have that deepest connection with themselves and actually have a true understanding of themselves. And I think that that's what's so necessary for negativity, because everybody has shit happening to them. Happy people don't have things that just don't happen to them. It's just the way that they see things and the way that they handle it is different from other people. You have people that like, you know what I mean? You have people that like they want to quit their job after the smallest inconvenience. You know what I mean? Like they have a job and their boss is like, oh, yo, can you like stay back 4 minutes? Like, no, this, bro, I'm quitting. You know what I mean? Stupid example, but it's that same type of thing with our life. Like we have something that is, you know, on the grand scheme of life isn't that major, but we freak out and we flip out and we overreact and we can't handle it because we don't know why it's such a big deal. Like, why do we care so much about that? But the moment you understand why you care so much about that, you're able to kind of react more like reasonably.
And it was you actually said a very powerful statement that I don't think a lot of, if you didn't hear, I think that if there's one thing you can take away from this podcast is that a lot of people kind of struggle to actually know themselves. It's like when you really think about it, like that's actually really insane. You know what I mean? Like most of us were alive for like 24, 30, 40, 50 years and we still don't really know who we are, which is like, I think that's if anything, that should be a very prime kind of a motive for you guys to like stop worrying about all these other external stuff, or striving to kind of know what this person says or what this on all this kind of stuff. Is like kind of figure out who you are and be grounded in who you are and know how to kind of persevere through any kind of situation. Because like what Femi was saying, as soon as you know that, and as soon as you become self-aware in all these kind of things, then that's really the time where you're able to move. You're really trying to grow with anything, with every topic that we've been talking about. Like the key starts, and the biggest thing that you need to be able to do is just take that opportunity to kind of reflect, self-aware, do the work, and get better and grow from that.
100%, 100%. And I was reading a book just really quickly before we end. I was reading a book that said like, wisdom is knowing other people and understanding other people. Enlightenment is knowing yourself. When you reach the level of enlightenment, I don't mean that from a woohoo spiritual perspective. I mean that from like really, enlightenment is just being aware, being aware of shit, right? That's what enlightenment means, right? So it's kind of like the moment that you know yourself, that you're so much more comfortable and you're so much more solid within yourself. You're so much more solid within your role in the world, and allows you to be much more settled and aware of the way that the world works around you and your world. Because in reality, the world has been going and turning and twisting and stuffing up. Nothing is new under the sun. So if you're able to understand that and you're rolling that, you're much more comfortable being able to, transcend and act on that. And I want you guys to replay that over and over again until you understand what I just said, because that might have gone over a couple of people's head, to be honest.
Yes, sir. Maybe because I don't know if you had like a little bit of background noise, maybe that's why I want to put it over people's head.
Oh, could you hear Micah in the back?
yeah, maybe.
That's crazy. Yeah, he's on my door, bro. Like, he's like, Uncle Femi. I'm like, yo.
Now you guys will see how crazy this guy is. Dope.
But that's sick. I love that episode. I want to leave it on that. I think that it's sick. I think there's a lot of things that people can take out of this, a lot of actionable steps. So, yeah, man, for me, I think that's amazing. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or say or whatever?
The only thing that I can say to you guys right now was that if you enjoyed that, you got some value out of that, then share it, pass it on. Let's spread the positivity. Let's spread the awareness. Let's grow together. And that's kind of it from like another episode of Nick and Femi on the Uncovered podcast. So, guys, like, comment, share, leave a review, do all those kind of things. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yes, sir.